No. Okay, so this would be a lecture on using cutter comp. Cutter comp on the CNC mills, you're going to either use G41 or G42 is your codes for using a cutter comp. Okay, so the first thing you have to decide what you're going to use, a G41 or a G42. Okay, and by doing that, if this was your part, you first have to decide which way I'm going to cut around this part to climb mill. Remember on the CNC machine, you always want to climb mill. Okay? So, if this is our cutter, climb milling, your chips are always coming out behind you. So that means we want to go that way. Okay? On an exterior part. We always want to go that way. So, now to figure out if you want to use a G41 or G42, you got to picture yourself from behind the cutter and which way you want that cutter to offset from your line. Okay, so it's important because you got to decide left or right, so it's important to look at it from the right way. So as I'm looking at it from behind us, I want my cutter to go on the left side of that line as I'm coming around this way. Okay, which would give me a G41. All right? Okay. You just see if that's in the center. So now we got the G41, so we know which way we want to use. Okay, let's say for down here. Okay, we still want to climb mill, so that's going down, right? As you're looking at it from behind, I still want my cutter to go on the G41 on the left side of the line. Okay? Let's say you're doing an inside pocket. Okay? Now here's our part. And we got a pocket on the inside. Here's our cutter. Okay, we want the chips to come out behind, so that means we want to go that way. Alright? Get behind the cutter. I want them cutting that way, still to the left side of the line. So it's a G41. So basically in a CNC situation, you always want to climb mill, and you always, by rule, you're always going to use a G41. Okay? So it's up to you as a programmer to decide which way around that part I want to go. So I'm climb milling and using the G41. Okay? Okay, so now we have our part. Let's just throw some dimensions on here. We'll give that 0, 0. We'll call this 2 inches, 3 inches. Okay? And now we're going to mill this part out. We have stock all the way around, and we have to mill this down to size. Okay? Let's just say we have a 1/4 inch here. Doesn't really matter, but just so we know we have material left around that we have to take off. Okay? So we put our part in the vise. Okay? Offset our 0, the edge finder, and then we also offset a 1/4 inch both ways. So our 0 corner is actually inside of our part, so when we mill around it, we're going to mill material all the way around it so we have a nice square part when we're done. Okay? Okay, we know we're going to use G41. The climb mill would be going this way, right? This is the rotation that we want to go. Alright? Okay, so now we have to figure out our start point. We know we want to start in this area, right? Because we want to cut this way along this line. Okay? So, what you want to do is you want to start off the part up here. Now remember, it doesn't really matter what size our cutter is because we're going to tell it in the program how big that cutter is in our offset page. But you have to know, you have to have an idea of what size cutter you want to use because you have to stay that far off your start point. Okay, by rule you have to stay the radius value of your cutter. So if this is a 1/2 inch cutter, you have to stay at minimum 1/4 of an inch off your part. Okay, so by rule of thumb what I'll say is, I think I'm going to use a 1/2 inch cutter. Okay, I'm going to stay a diameter off my start point. Okay, so by rule that means I could use up to a 1 inch cutter. Alright, so if this is my 0, I'm going to start 0.5 in the Y. Okay, and then the X, you just want to make sure you start off of it. So even if you said X -1 point. Okay, so you're going to start off your part like that. So we got our start point. Okay, so now to get into writing our program, you got those first 4 lines, T1, M06, G90, G54, G00, X be your start point. Okay? And then you'd have your S, M03, G43, H01, Z.1, and if you're turning your coolant down, M08. Okay? Notice the same four lines, pretty much the same information. Okay, as we've been using. Okay, so we have our start point. Next step would be to go down into your Z depth. Okay, if you want to go G01, Z -0.1. Okay, and because this is the first time we're using a G01, you need a feed rate, whatever that may be. Okay, so at this point in the program, our tool's over here, turning at whatever RPMs we told it to turn, -0.1, so it's below the top of the part and it's ready to start cutting. Alright, we're already in G01, you don't need it, you can put it in, don't matter. And now this is where we call up our G41, cutter comp left. Okay? And here, the first dimension you want to give it to is where do you want it to start? I want it to come down so my cutter is right on 0. So it's going to figure out the diameter, take that, figure out how far it has to come down so the tangent point is at Y0. Okay? And every time you use a G41, you need a D number. And that D number has to coincide with your tool number. Real similar to what the H was. Okay? The H was our tool length with the G43. Okay? With a G41, it needs a D number. And if you remember in your offset page, when you set your tool lengths, you had the length, and then on the next side of it, right next to it to the right of it, you had the diameter, right? So if we were using a 1/2 inch cutter, that's where we would put 0.5. If we're using a 3/4 cutter, we put in 0.75. Whatever the diameter of your cutter is, that's what you're going to put it in. Okay? And this is where the machine figures out where that needs to be. If you had a 1/2 inch cutter in here, if you look at your position page or at this point in the program, it's going to say Y.25. If you had a 3/4 inch cutter in there, this would say your position would be Y.375, half your cutter. Okay? So this is the beauty, I guess, of using cutter comp, because it knows how far it has to stay away from the outline of your part by using the G41. You don't have to sit there and figure out half of my cutter, and I have to go halfway this way and pass that way. The machine will figure all that out for you now. Okay? So now, once we got to this point, now it's basically just connecting dots. Okay? Like I said, you don't have to figure out how far past I want to go. You just program the outline of your part. So this would be X 3.0. Y negative 2.0 down here. X0. Now Y, you don't want to stop right here. You want to cut out past it. Okay, you don't want it to stop here. And usually what I do is I'll just go out to my start point. Because that was far enough for me to bring it in, so that's going to be far enough to finish it off. Y positive 0.5. Okay, so now our cutter is sitting up here with our tangent point at X0. Okay, now every time you're done with a pass, you need to turn your cutter comp off. If you went right to G28 right here, your machine's going to alarm out saying you didn't use a cutter comp cancel. Okay, cutter comp cancel is a G40. So from here, G40, and you have to cut off the line. So here too, another easier thing to do would be go right back to your start point, X negative 1.0, and I'll just put in the Y.5, you know you don't need it. So that's back to your start point. Okay? So now, from here, if that's all you had to do is negative 0.1, you go with G28. Okay? If we have to make multiple passes, we can copy everything from here to there and just repeat it by changing our Z depths. Okay? But it is important for you to come back to your start point and turn off your cutter comp every time you change your Z depths. Alright? Otherwise what you're going to do is you're going to end up getting errors. Because if you don't tell it, you turn your cutter comp off, and you tell it to come back here, you remember that machine's always trying to keep that cutter on the left side of that edge. So it's going to want to start doing some funky things there if you don't turn the cutter comp off. And as long as you're doing the copy and the paste, it's not really any more typing. You copy this, you paste it. If I got to do 4 times, I'm going to copy that 4 times. Okay? So like I said, the important thing every time you change your Z depth is get back to your start point and turn your cutter comp off. So like I said, this is the way you want to use your CNC machine. You want to use a G41, because that's going to calculate, you know, how far it has to be. This seems pretty simple, it's just a square block, but once you start getting into radiuses and contours and stuff like that, you don't want to sit there and try to figure out how far away the center of my cutter's got to be. You're going to let the machine do all that for you. So, hopefully that helps out.